Straight ahead on Law and Crime Daily. A verdict is in the fake murder Uber trial, the case that made the nation rethink rideshare safety. Did Nathaniel Rowland kidnap and murder college student Samantha Josephson?
The simple answer, typically not the right answer.
The tearful testimony from 4 officers describing how they bravely fought to defend the Capitol building on January 6th.
Thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die, defending this entrance.
And Britney Spears asking a judge to remove her dad as conservator, who she wants to replace him ahead.
We look forward to litigating the matter in court.
Pam Hupp appears in court for the first time for charges in the murder of her friend, Betsy Faria. The Georgia spa shooter pleads guilty to 4 murders, but still could face the death penalty for more killings. Law and Crime Daily covering court cases from coast to coast. Welcome everyone to Law and Crime Daily. I'm Brian Buckmeyer along with Terry Austin. After 1 hour of deliberations, a South Carolina jury reached a verdict for the man accused of murdering a college student who got into his car thinking he was her Uber ride. Here's their verdict.
State of South Carolina versus Nathaniel David Rowland. This is an indictment for possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. We the jury find the defendant guilty. Please sign 4-person juror number 130.
Nathaniel Rowland is on trial for kidnapping and murdering 21-year-old Samantha Josephson. Josephson was last seen on surveillance video around 2 a.m. in March 2019, leaving a bar and getting into a black vehicle that reportedly belongs to Rowland. Josephson was stabbed more than 120 times, many defensive wounds. Prosecutors say she left a trail of evidence leading right to the defendant.
Samantha Josephson's footprints were on the window of Nathaniel Rowland's Impala. The inside. This was her cry for help. The defense has tried to draw your attention to everything except the evidence that points to Mr. Rowland. He didn't have any scratches or marks on him. Well, he did. They were on the jacket, the striations. None of his DNA was found on her body. He's wearing long sleeves. He's wearing gloves. That decreases the likelihood of shedding or sweating or the passing of DNA cells. He took her life, and he took the time to try to erase all the evidence. Samantha Josephson deserved the chance to live her life. And this man, the defendant, Nathaniel Rowland, he took that chance from her. It was malicious, it was intentional, and it was cold-blooded.
But the defense says they've got the wrong guy, telling the jury the evidence and lack of his DNA under her fingernails points somewhere else.
Nobody has stood up here and said that Nathaniel Rowland was not the one driving the car. But her blood being in the car and Nathaniel Rowland driving the car does not mean that he is the one that killed him. Killed her. There are 32 different times that Nathaniel Rowland is excluded from profiles. Or it's a combination, either excluded or involves other people. 32 different times. She put up a fight and Nathaniel Rowland had not a mark on him. That is what we know. And Mr. Goldberg said that she left a trail with her footprint. Well, she gave y'all the conclusion with her nails. She told y'all who it was.
After their guilty verdict, court moved right into sentencing. The victim's mother pleaded with the judge to sentence Rowland to the maximum possible sentence.
Her dreams were my dream, and her death was my death. I close my eyes and I feel what she endured at his hands 120 times. Over and over and over, fighting for her life, locked in his car. I used to have dreams for her. Now all I have are nightmares.
I just wish the state would have done more in finding out who the actual person was. instead of being satisfied with detaining me and proving my guilt.
The terror imposed on their child and the pain and grief that you have caused. She was an amazing person, an amazing human being, and she obviously put up an amazing fight against you and left a sufficient trail for the jury to see. The sentence of the court for murder is that you be committed to the State Department of Corrections for life.
Defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and Terry Austin. Bernardo, a verdict in just over an hour with no notes. What do you think was going on in the deliberation room to give us such a quick verdict?
So the jury definitely got the right verdict. They got the right verdict because the prosecution proved beyond a reasonable doubt that Nathaniel Rowland killed Miss Josephson. Not only did he kill her, but that he savagely stabbed her over 120 times. The evidence here was so enormous that the jury didn't have any doubt as to his guilt. And that's why they came back with a quick verdict. To be honest, I think that what took them an hour was just them trying to finish up the lunch, because it was definitely proven beyond a reasonable doubt. In addition to that, the defense's opening statement backfired on them when the prosecutor said the number 0 is the 0 amount of people that had something to do with her death, and that the number 12 is 12 reasons how they've proven their case beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah, the prosecution definitely flipped that on them in the closing statements with a more powerful argument. Terry, the judge sentenced Rowland immediately and with some strong words. What did you think of the judge's sentence and what he said to Rowland?
Well, I think Judge Newman is everyone's new hero. He even said that there was an avalanche of evidence against Rowland. He said that every single trail led right back to this defendant. It only took the jury 1 hour and 7 minutes because they had some strong arguments. And the judge actually talked about some of that all of the clothing led back to the defendant. Some of the things the prosecution also said is that this weapon, it was two-sided and it was one-sided. So definitely more evidence than was needed.
Absolutely. He will be serving a very lengthy sentence at only 27 years old. Thank you for the input on this, the fake Uber murder trial. Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, the shocking plea deal for the Atlanta spa shooter. Why this isn't case closed yet. But first, Britney Spears' new request in her conservatorship saga. Who the pop star wants on and off her case. Our legal analysis after the break. Welcome back. Britney Spears makes it official. She's asking a judge to remove her father as conservator of her estate and replace him with someone else. Law and Crime's Angela Levy has the latest on Spears' battle to end the conservatorship.
Brian, Britney Spears' new attorney filed a 127-page document asking the court to replace her father, Jamie Spears, with a forensic accountant for now. Britney Spears taking steps to end the conservatorship she's lived under for 13 years. Her fans appearing at the most recent hearing.
They're moving in the right direction now that she has her lawyer that she got to choose, but honestly, she should have never been sent back into that situation after everything she claimed in June 23rd.
In a new filing, Spears' new lawyer, Matthew Rosengart, called the conservatorship a, quote, Kafka-esque nightmare.
I want to thank her fans who have been incredibly supportive of her.
Rosengart has asked that Jamie Spears be replaced as conservator of the estate with Jason Rubin, a forensic accountant. Rosengart wrote in the filing that Jamie Spears has, quote, profited handsomely from his daughter's conservatorship, making $16,000 per month on top of other fees from tours. He also writes, serious questions abound concerning Mr. Spears' potential misconduct, including conflicts of interest, conservatorship abuse, and the evident dissipation of Ms. Spears' fortune, estimated to be worth $60 million, which Rosengart says is less than her contemporaries.
Less than 2 weeks ago, we pledged that after 13 years of the status quo, my firm and I would move aggressively and expeditiously to file a petition to suspend and remove James P. Spears.
Jamie Spears has objected to being removed in the past. Meanwhile, Britney Spears' fans will be watching for his next move.
I'm very excited that Britney Spears has her own lawyer to fight this. I'm excited to get Jamie Spears off of the conservatorship.
In the past, through his lawyer, Jamie Spears has said in court that he was sorry to see his daughter in so much pain, and he has actually cast a lot of the blame for her unhappiness on Jodi Montgomery, who is the conservator of her personal affairs. But Britney Spears wants Montgomery to remain in that role. The next hearing for this is scheduled for September. Brian.
Thanks, Anjanette. Back with us is criminal defense attorney Bernardo Villalona and Terry Austin. Terry, it's official. The request to remove Jamie Spears has been submitted. What is the next step for this conservatorship?
Well, I think this was an important step to get Jamie Spears removed and to put Jason Rubin on the case. He is a professional fiduciary, and he should be able to get matters in order. And I think the fact that in the petition we had the mother actually saying that all of what's going on with the father is causing Britney to not be well. And so I think the next step is going to be making sure she is well, and she's reserved her right ultimately to come out of the conservatorship altogether. And that may be the next step.
Bernardo, this isn't the end of the conservatorship. They are simply looking to remove Jamie Spears. Is this an indication that Britney believes she still needs to be in the conservatorship?
No, not at all, Brian. This is just the first step for Britney Spears. As you can see, her attorneys were much more concerned with the health, the mental health and emotional state of Britney Spears, with having to deal with her father as being part of this conservatorship. So they were just focusing on this as the first step, is to get rid of Jamie. And they also did in their motion is that they reserved their right to argue to end a conservatorship. So we will be hearing more about this in the next couple of weeks or so.
So definitely the first step of many. Let's talk dollars and cents. Anjanette, was Jamie Spears making more each month than his daughter?
Yeah, it appears that way from what Matthew Rosengart said in that filing. He said that Jamie Spears, as I mentioned in the piece, was paying himself $16,000 a month. Rosengart says that's actually $2,000 more per month than he was giving his daughter basically as an allowance. I guess she was getting around $14,000 and he was getting an additional $2,000 for office space. So she's making all this money and has all this money in the bank, but is being given very little to spend.
Yeah, it seems definitely like an allowance you would give a small child and not a pop icon such as Britney Spears, who's pulling in all this money. We'll continue to give you an update on the Britney Spears conservatorship as it develops. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, Robert Durst's defense signals he might not take the stand in his murder trial for the killing of his best friend. Plus, Pam Hupp officially pleads not guilty to murdering her best friend, Betsy Faria. The case that's captured the eyes of true crime junkies inside the courtroom. Next. Welcome back. Let's check in on some top legal stories, including the Atlanta spa shooter pleading guilty to 4 murders in a deal that could spare him the death penalty, at least in one case. Robert Long admitted to killing 4 of the 8 people he's accused of shooting during a day-long spree of violence in 3 massage parlors in Georgia. Long pled guilty in Cherokee County, where the shootings began. But Long still faces 19 charges in Fulton County, including murder and domestic terrorism. The Fulton County District Attorney says she intends to seek the death penalty and a hate crime sentencing enhancement. 6 of the victims were women of Asian descent. A Missouri woman accused of killing her best friend and framing the woman's husband made her first appearance in court Tuesday for the case. Pam Hupp was charged earlier this month in the 2011 murder of Betsy Faria. Faria was stabbed 55 times inside her home.
In that complaint, the state alleges in that on or about December 27th, 2011, in the county of Lincoln, state of Missouri, that after deliberation, you knowingly caused the death of Elizabeth Faria by stabbing.
Her husband, Russell Faria, was tried and convicted of her murder, but was acquitted in a 2015 retrial. Prosecutors now say Hupp attacked Faria to stage the murder as a rage killing by her husband. Hupp is currently serving a life sentence for another murder. Prosecutors say they will seek the death penalty. Defense attorneys for real estate heir Robert Durst are asking for a mistrial again. In newly filed court documents, attorneys say Mr. Durst is in an impossible situation in that he cannot physically testify in his own defense at trial. And if he attempted to, he risks further damage to his health or death. Durst is on trial for the December 2000 murder of his best friend, Susan Berman. Prosecutors are expected to rest their case this week, and the defense will begin after. Durst has signaled multiple times in court that he plans to take the stand. Be sure to tune in to the Law&Crime Network for gavel-to-gavel coverage. Now to Massachusetts, where police officers sniffed out 2 suspects wanted for stealing a puppy in broad daylight. A family noticed 8-month-old black lab Ember was missing from their front yard. Wesley police talked to neighbors who saw on their doorbell cams a vehicle circling the area. The officers tracked down Manuel Sierra and an unidentified woman. The officers say they saw Ember in their yard. The suspects allegedly say they took the dog because one of them is sick. Police shared the emotional reunion of Ember with their forever family. Ember is back home and is reportedly doing very well, getting lots of love. Both suspects are facing charges of receiving stolen property over $1,200 and conspiracy. Heartwarming to see that 4-legged friend back with his family. When we come back, officers give a first-hand account of the brutal scene at the Capitol on January 6th. Their story of how they were protecting democracy and their message to the country. Next. Beaten, kicked, blinded with chemical irritants. Just some of the conditions 4 officers testified to enduring during the Capitol insurrection. They spoke candidly in front of a House Select Committee investigating the riots.
The rioters call me traitor, a disgrace, and shouted that I, an Army veteran and a police officer, should be executed. I, too, was being crushed by the rioters. I could feel myself losing oxygen and recall thinking to myself, this is how I'm going to die, defending this entrance.
At some point during the fighting, I was dragged from the line of officers and into the crowd. I heard someone scream, "I got one!" As I was swarmed by a violent mob, they ripped off my badge. They grabbed and stripped me of my radio. They seized ammunition that was secured to my body. They began to beat me with their fists and with what felt like hard metal objects. At one point, I came face to face with an attacker who repeatedly lunged for me and attempted to remove my firearm. I heard chanting from some in the crowd, "Get his gun," and kill him with his own gun.
Directly in front of me, a man seized the opportunity of my vulnerability. He grabbed the front of my gas mask and used it to beat my head against the door. He switched to pulling it off my head, the straps stretching against my skull and straining my neck. He never uttered any words I recognized, but opted instead for guttural screams. I remember him foaming at the mouth. He also put his cell phone in his mouth so that he had both hands free to assault me. Eventually, he succeeded in stripping away my gas mask, and a new rush of exposure to CS and OC spray hit me. A mob of terrorists were coordinating their efforts now, shouting "Heave! Ho!" as they synchronized, pushing their weight forward, crushing me further against the middle door frame. The man in front of me grabbed my baton that I still held in my hands, and in my current state, I was unable to retain my weapon. He bashed me in the head and face with it, rupturing my lip and adding additional injury to my skull.
Us 4 officers, we would do January 6th all over again. We wouldn't stay home because we knew it was going to happen. We would show up. That's courageous. That's heroic. So what I ask from you all is to get to the bottom of what happened. And that includes, like, I echoed the sentiments of all of the other officers sitting here. I use an analogy to describe what I want as a hitman. If a hitman is hired and he kills somebody, the hitman goes to jail. But not only does the hitman go to jail, but the person who hired them does. There was an attack carried out on January 6th, and a hitman sent them.
It's one thing to see the video, it's another thing to hear their words and their cries out for justice. Bernardo, what facts are you hearing for the first time, and do they spell out criminal charges in any way?
Brian, what affected me is what these officers actually felt, what they were going through, because we saw it on TV. We saw it on basically every news channel. We saw videos, but we couldn't fathom the amount of trauma that these officers went through, what was said to them, what they were feeling, how they were facing death. At this point, Brian, I don't know if there's going to be additional criminal charges. Does it spell out criminal charges? Absolutely. But whether the government's going to be able to charge the so many people that were involved, I'm not sure. It's going to take some time.
Yeah. And of course, the officers being the victims, our hope is that they get some sort of assistance for that traumatic experience and when they're going through. Terry, who is this committee for at the end of the day? What do you think will come of this hearing?
Well, you know, the Select Committee is part of the House investigation of this January 6th event, and it is supposed to be a, bipartisan group of individuals. There are actually 7 Democrats and 2 Republicans, and Nancy Pelosi put the group together. And their whole purpose is really to follow the facts. They're trying to make sure that nothing like this happens again. They actually have some power, Brian, to issue subpoenas and call witnesses, as you just heard from these police officers talking about what they experienced today. So it's unclear what the end result will be, but certainly we'll have more information.
All right, all we can do is wait and follow the facts. Thank you both. And thank you for joining us here on Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.